Her public rejection by her fated mate was the worst moment of her life, until a rival alpha. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the grand courtyard of the Silver Moon Palace. Leora walked among the gathered nobles, her heart pounding like a drum in her chest. Today was meant to be the moment of her greatest triumph, a celebration of the bond between her and Kaelin, the alpha she was fated to. Her gown shimmered like liquid silver, catching the fading light, and for a moment she allowed herself to imagine a life of joy, of shared power and love that awaited her. The courtyard was filled with voices, laughter, and whispers. Nobles from every corner of the kingdom had arrived, their robes rich with colors that marked status and bloodlines. Servants flitted about, carrying trays of sparkling wine and delicacies. Every eye seemed to turn toward her as she approached the ceremonial dais, where Kaelin stood waiting. His tall, commanding figure was framed by the palace's carved arches, and his presence drew attention like the pull of a magnet. Leora's hands trembled slightly, though she tried to hide it. Her mind repeated the words of the prophecy that had guided her life since childhood. When the fated bond is made, the two hearts will shine brighter than the sun and the moon together. She had dreamed of this moment, of Kaelin finally acknowledging her as his own. She had imagined the joy of standing together, hand in hand, their future as inseparable as the stars in the night sky. But Kaelin's eyes did not meet hers. They glimmered with something unreadable, something cold. Leora's breath caught, but she forced herself forward, her voice trembling slightly as she addressed the assembly. "I am honored to stand before you all today, as the one chosen to walk with Kaelin in the path the prophecy has foretold." A polite murmur rippled through the crowd. She saw Kaelin's lips curve in a faint, almost imperceptible smile, or was it a sneer? Before she could step closer, before she could reach for his hand, Kaelin spoke. His voice was clear, loud enough for all to hear. "I do not accept this bond." The words fell like a hammer. Silence exploded in the courtyard, a deafening absence of sound. Gasps echoed from every corner, nobles froze mid-step, and a servant dropped a tray, the clatter of fine crystal shattering against stone. Leora's knees felt weak. Her mouth opened, but no sound came. Her heartbeat thundered so loudly she was certain everyone could hear it. "Kaelin," she whispered, barely audible. Kaelin's gaze swept the crowd, ignoring her completely, and for the first time Leora saw the truth in his eyes. It was not cruelty nor mockery, though the effect was just as devastating, but fear. Real, deep, unyielding fear. She did not understand what it meant, but she felt the weight of it pressing down on her, suffocating her joy. The murmurs among the nobles grew louder. "A scandal," one whispered. "He refuses her in public." Another muttered, shock and disbelief mingling in their voices. Leora felt the blood drain from her face. Her body was frozen, as if the very air around her had become a cage. The ceremony ended in chaos. Leora fled the courtyard, the whispers following her like a storm cloud. She barely noticed the servants who tried to stop her or the guards who stared in confusion. Her world had narrowed to one thing: the unbearable humiliation of rejection. She ran through the palace corridors, her silver gown brushing against cold marble walls. The torches flickered, casting dancing shadows that seemed to echo her own inner turmoil. Her mind spun with questions. Why? Why now? Why here? What did I do wrong? She knew the answer could not lie in her actions alone. Kaelin had always been distant, reserved, yet she had never imagined this. Eventually, she found herself at the palace gates, the world outside cloaked in the deep violet of twilight. Beyond the walls lay the darkwood forest, a place of whispered legends and hidden dangers. Most feared it, but to Leora, it now felt like the only refuge from the shame and confusion consuming her. Without thinking, she stepped into the forest, the trees closing around her like protective arms. The forest was alive with the sounds of the night, rustling leaves, distant calls of nocturnal creatures, and the soft whisper of wind through branches. Leora's breath steadied as she walked deeper among the towering, ancient trees. Here, away from the eyes of the world, she allowed herself to feel the full weight of her despair. She sank to the forest floor, pressing her face into her hands, and let the tears fall freely. Hours seemed to pass in silence, broken only by the occasional cry of an owl or the snap of a twig. Leora felt utterly alone, abandoned not only by Kaelin but by fate itself. She had been destined for greatness, yet now that destiny felt like a cruel joke. A sudden sound startled her, a low, deliberate footstep, careful but deliberate. She looked up, heart racing, and saw a figure emerge from the shadows between the trees. Tall, broad-shouldered, and cloaked in darkness, he moved with an almost supernatural grace. His eyes, sharp and piercing, met hers with an intensity that made her shiver. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice calm but commanding like the quiet before a storm. I, I had nowhere else to go," Leora replied, her voice trembling. She tried to stand but stumbled slightly, the exhaustion and grief weighing heavily on her. The figure stepped closer, and she could see the details of his face in the dim light: strong jaw, high cheekbones, and eyes that seemed to see straight into her soul. There was something familiar in the curve of his smile, yet dangerous, like a predator who also held the key to safety. "I am Riven," he said, bowing slightly, "and I think I can help you." Leora blinked, unsure if she should feel relief or fear. Riven's presence was powerful, almost overwhelming, yet there was a strange kindness in his tone. "Help me? How?" she asked cautiously, suspicion creeping into her words. He took a step closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "The world is not as it seems. Kaelin's choice, it is not entirely his own. There are forces at work, dark, dangerous forces. If you trust me, I can guide you through them. I can give you strength you have never known." Leora felt a shiver run through her body. She wanted to hate him, to push him away, but something in his eyes, something unspoken, made her hesitate. He was a stranger, yet he offered her a path forward, a way to reclaim her honor and her power. "Why would you help me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Riven's gaze did not waver. "Because you deserve more than what has been forced upon you, and because you are stronger than you realize." For the first time since the rejection, Leora felt a spark of hope. She did not fully trust Riven, but she could not deny the truth in his words. The forest around them seemed to lean in closer, the shadows thickening as if to listen to their conversation. "I don't know if I can trust anyone right now," she admitted, her hands trembling slightly as she wiped her tears. "Trust is earned," Riven replied, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "But for now, you have my word. Follow me, and I will show you a way to rise from this humiliation, a way to become something more than even fate intended for you." Leora hesitated, looking back toward the direction of the palace, then to the dark trees surrounding her. She could feel the weight of every gaze, every whisper of nobles who had witnessed her rejection, pressing down on her like a storm cloud. She could return to the palace, live with the shame and pretend nothing had happened, or she could step into the unknown, follow this mysterious alpha and reclaim her destiny. Her choice was clear. "I will follow you," she said, her voice steadier now, though her heart still pounded in fear and anticipation. Riven inclined his head almost approvingly and led her deeper into the forest. The further they walked, the more the world she had known, the world of grand palaces, political games, and prophecy, faded behind her. Ahead lay danger, uncertainty, and perhaps the beginning of a strength she had never imagined. As the shadows of the forest thickened, Leora felt something she had not felt in hours, a spark of defiance. She would not be defined by Kaelin's rejection, by whispers or fear. She would rise. And in the distance, just beyond the trees, the faint glow of Riven's stronghold hinted at secrets, trials, and a world that could change her forever. The night was alive with possibility, and as Leora followed him, she could not help but wonder, what kind of power and what kind of danger waited for her in the heart of the darkness. And perhaps in the depths of that darkness, she would discover something even more dangerous than fear: desire. The forest around them grew denser as night deepened. Shadows stretched long, twisting into shapes that made Leora's skin prickle, yet she felt a strange sense of safety in Riven's presence. He walked ahead, silent but alert, every movement precise and purposeful, as though he could sense danger before it even appeared. "I've never been this far into the darkwood before," Leora admitted softly, her voice carrying just above a whisper. The forest seemed to close in around them, alive with strange sounds, hoots, rustling leaves, and the distant cry of unknown creatures. "You'll see things tonight you may not believe," Riven said, his voice calm but carrying a weight that made her shiver. "But you must remember this: the world is not always as it seems. Strength comes to those who are willing to claim it, not those who wait for it to be given." Leora nodded, her heart still tight from the memory of Kaelin's public rejection. She had imagined so many times that day differently, dreaming of joy and triumph, only to have it shattered in an instant. But Riven's words stirred something deep inside her. Perhaps there was more to life than the expectations of prophecy and the will of others. Perhaps she could forge her own destiny. They walked in silence for some time, the only sound the crunch of leaves beneath their feet. Eventually, they arrived at a clearing where the trees arched high into the night sky, forming a natural cathedral. In the center stood a small, weathered stone structure, half ruined but emanating a strange energy that made Leora's skin tingle. "This is my sanctuary," Riven said, gesturing toward the stone structure. "Few dare to enter here. It is a place where the magic of the forest is strongest." Leora stepped inside, her eyes wide. The air was thick with a soft, glowing light that seemed to come from the stones themselves. Symbols etched into the walls pulsed faintly, as if alive. She felt a strange energy course through her, a mixture of fear and awe. "Why have you brought me here?" she asked. "Because if you are to survive what is coming, you must understand power," Riven replied. He stepped closer, his gaze intense. "Kaelin's rejection was not just personal. It is part of something far larger, a curse that has been placed on him, and anyone bound to him. You need to learn to protect yourself, to rise above the pain and fear, or it will consume you." Leora swallowed hard. "A curse?" she asked. Her mind raced. Could it be true? Could Kaelin really have been forced to reject her by something beyond his control? The thought both frightened and angered her. "Yes," Riven said, nodding slightly, "and I can help you, but first you must trust me, and that trust is earned through trials. Tonight you will face the first." He handed her a small, polished stone that glowed faintly. "This is a guide. Hold it and it will show you the path. But beware, the forest tests those who enter it. You will face shadows of your own fears." Leora gripped the stone tightly, feeling its warmth seep into her hand. A shiver ran through her, not of cold but of anticipation. She nodded. "I am ready." "Good," Riven said. "Then step forward." The stone's light expanded, bathing the clearing in a soft glow. The shadows around her seemed to deepen, coiling like living things. Leora took a deep breath and stepped forward, following the path illuminated by the stone. The air grew colder, and a low whispering sound filled her ears, almost as if the forest itself was speaking to her. Images flashed before her eyes: Kaelin's rejection, the whispers of nobles, her own fear and shame. They swirled around her, pressing on her mind. She felt her legs weaken, her heart threatening to give out under the weight of memory. "Focus," Riven's voice said, cutting through the storm of her thoughts. He stepped beside her, steadying her with his presence. "These shadows are not real. They are tests. Face them and they will lose their power over you." Leora closed her eyes, drawing in a steadying breath. She imagined the fear as a heavy cloak around her shoulders, then let it fall to the ground. Slowly, the shadows began to dissipate, the whispers fading. She opened her eyes to see the path ahead clear, the glowing stone pulsing warmly in her hand. You are stronger than you realize, Riven said quietly, a faint smile tugging at his lips. But strength is only one part of the journey. The other is understanding yourself and understanding those you trust and those you do not. They continued through the forest, the path winding and twisting until they reached a small river. The water ran dark and smooth, reflecting the moonlight like a mirror. Riven paused, gesturing to the riverbank. "This is where the next trial begins," he said. "You must cross the water, but the river carries illusions. It will show you what you fear most. You must pass without succumbing to them." Leora's stomach tightened. She glanced at the dark water, then back at Riven. His gaze was steady, unwavering. I will try," she said, gripping the glowing stone tighter. She stepped into the river, the cold water biting at her ankles. At first it was simple enough, but then images began to appear in the water, Kaelin, cruel and distant, laughing as the nobles whispered around her. Shadows of past fears and insecurities rose from the depths, trying to pull her under. Leora fought to focus, reminding herself that these were illusions. She thought of her own strength, of the fire that had not been extinguished by Kaelin's rejection. With each step she pushed back the visions, feeling her confidence grow. By the time she reached the far bank, the illusions had vanished, leaving only the stillness of the river and the moonlight reflecting on her wet hair. Riven waited for her, his eyes glinting with approval. "Well done," he said. "Many fail at this stage. You are proving yourself capable of more than you or anyone else realized." Leora felt a surge of pride and relief, though her heart still carried the ache of Kaelin's rejection. She looked at Riven, seeing him not just as a guide or rival, but as someone who recognized her worth when others had doubted it. "You are unlike anyone I have ever met," Riven said, his voice softer now. "There is fire in you and a resilience that is rare. I see strength, even when others see only weakness." Leora's heart fluttered at his words. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that she could rise above the past, but a part of her still ached for Kaelin. The rejection had cut deep, and no trial, no forest, no rival could erase the sting entirely. As they continued their journey, Riven told her more about the curse surrounding Kaelin. It was ancient, tied to the bloodline of the Alphas, a darkness that sought to control bonds and twist fated mates apart. Leora listened, absorbing every detail. Each revelation made her more determined to reclaim her power, not just for herself, but for Kaelin as well. Despite everything, she did not wish him harm, only freedom from the chains that had forced his rejection. Hours passed, and they finally reached Riven's stronghold, a fortress carved into the side of a cliff, hidden among the trees. The walls were black stone, worn by time but strong, and strange glowing runes pulsed faintly along the surface. Inside, the air was warm and alive with energy, the space filled with artifacts, tomes, and strange magical instruments. "You will rest here," Riven said, leading her inside. "Tomorrow your training begins in earnest. There is much you must learn and little time to waste." Leora nodded, exhaustion finally catching up with her. She allowed herself to sit on a simple cot in one corner, watching as Riven moved about, preparing for the night. Despite her fatigue, her mind was restless, replaying the day's events, Kaelin's rejection, and the strange pull she felt toward Riven. As the night deepened, she realized something that surprised her. She felt safer here, in this fortress surrounded by shadows and mystery, than she had in the grand halls of the palace. Here, she was not defined by prophecy or the expectations of others. Here, she was herself. And yet, the thought of Kaelin lingered, a sharp reminder of the pain that had set her on this path. Could she forgive him? Could she find compassion for the one who had hurt her so publicly? Or would the bond between her and Riven grow stronger, replacing the one she had thought unbreakable? Riven approached her quietly, sensing her thoughts. "You are ready for more than just survival," he said softly. "You are ready to take control of your own fate. And in doing so, you may find that the heart is more powerful than fear and more enduring than pain. Leora looked up at him, seeing not just a rival but a guide, a protector, and perhaps something more. She did not know what the future held, only that she would face it with courage, and that the path ahead would demand everything she had, and more. As she drifted to sleep, the glow of the stone riven had given her pulsing softly beside her. She felt a stirring of hope. The night was full of shadows, but it also carried promise. And somewhere deep in the forest, fate was watching, waiting to see which path she would choose, and whether she would rise from the darkness stronger than ever. The sun rose pale and weak over the darkwood forest, casting silvery light across Riven's stronghold. Leora stood on the balcony, the wind tugging at her hair and gown. Her eyes scanned the forest below, but her mind was elsewhere, on Kaelin and the painful rejection that had begun this journey. She had grown stronger since that day, faced trials that tested her courage, and learned to command the strange powers that stirred within her blood. Yet, even now, she could not escape the knot of longing and anger she felt toward him. Riven approached quietly, his shadow stretching across the balcony beside her. "The day has come," he said softly, his voice calm but heavy with anticipation. "Kaelin is in the cathedral ruins. The curse is strongest there. If we do not act, he may be lost forever." Leora turned to him, her gaze sharp. "And if I fail?" she asked. Her voice carried no fear, only determination. She had grown too much to allow hesitation to control her now. "You will not fail," Riven said simply, "but the choice is yours." This is about more than power. It is about trust, and about understanding what it means to be truly free. They mounted their horses and rode through the forest, the trees parting as if acknowledging their passage. The cathedral ruins loomed ahead, dark and towering, the stones blackened by age and magic. A low mist curled around the base of the building, swirling as though alive. The air smelled of iron and smoke, and the whispers of the curse seemed to drift faintly through the fog. As they entered, Leora felt a pulse of energy that made her knees weak. Kaelin knelt at the center of the cathedral, his head bowed. Shadows coiled around him, dark tendrils that sought to twist his will, suppressing his strength and his heart. Leora's chest tightened at the sight. He looked smaller than she remembered, human in his vulnerability, despite the alpha blood that ran in his veins. Riven dismounted, motioning for Leora to stay behind him. "The curse binds him to fear," he whispered. "You must reach him with more than strength. You must reach him with your heart." Leora stepped forward slowly, her step steady despite the icy chill in the air. She remembered the humiliation of the palace courtyard, the shock, the shame, the sting of rejection. But she also remembered the trials she had faced, the river, the illusions, the darkness she had conquered, and the warmth of Riven's guidance that had helped her reclaim her confidence. She took a deep breath and knelt before Kaelin. "Kaelin," she said, her voice carrying through the cathedral like a soft song, "look at me." Kaelin's head lifted slowly, his eyes clouded with confusion and fear. When he met her gaze, she saw the terror, the guilt, the helplessness. He had not rejected her because he wished to hurt her, she realized. He had been trapped, a prisoner of the curse that sought to control the fates of fated mates. You came," he whispered, voice trembling. You were never alone," Leora interrupted gently. "You were trapped by something beyond your control. I know now, and I'm here to help you break it." The shadows hissed, curling tighter around Kaelin. Leora felt the familiar pulse of power within her respond, a surge that intertwined with the strength she had learned from Riven. She extended her hands, allowing the energy to flow outward, warm and steady, touching Kaelin with a calm she had cultivated through trials and courage. For a moment nothing happened. Then the shadows flinched, recoiling as if burned by her touch. Kaelin gasped, his hands clenching as he felt the constriction around his mind ease slightly. Leora's heart ached as she saw the man she had loved, the one who had unknowingly caused her such pain, finally begin to breathe freely again. Riven stepped forward, adding his own strength to hers. Together, their combined energy formed a shield, pushing back the darkness, unraveling the curse thread by thread. The cathedral trembled, stones quivering and runes glowing brighter, reacting to the raw force of their magic. Kalen's voice grew stronger as the shadows weakened. Leora, his words faltered as another wave of darkness surged, but he held her gaze, drawing courage from her presence. "Do not fight alone," Leora said, her voice firm but kind. "We are stronger together." With a final, powerful surge, the shadows dissolved, evaporating into mist that rose to the cathedral ceiling and vanished. The curse had been broken, or at least, weakened enough to free Kalen from immediate harm. He collapsed forward, exhausted but alive, and Leora caught him before he could fall to the cold stone floor. He looked up at her, eyes wide with awe and gratitude. "You saved me," he whispered. "All this time I thought I had failed you." "You did not fail," Leora replied, holding his gaze steadily. "Neither of us failed. We were both trapped by something we could not control. Now we have a choice." Kalen reached for her hand, trembling. His words faltered again, but the sincerity in his eyes was undeniable. "I was afraid of what would happen if I accepted the bond, afraid I could not protect you from the curse. But I see now, you have more strength than I ever imagined." Leora felt a surge of emotion, a mix of relief, compassion, and the lingering ache of past wounds. She looked at Riven, who nodded subtly from a few steps away, his gaze steady and approving. He had guided her, taught her, strengthened her, but now the choice belonged to her alone. "Kalen," she said softly, "you have always been my fated mate and you still hold a place in my heart. But I have grown. I am not the same girl you rejected in the courtyard. I am stronger, wiser, and I will not be defined by fear or by shame." Kalen swallowed hard, understanding dawning in his eyes. "Then, what will you do?" Leora's gaze shifted to Riven for a moment, then back to Kalen. She realized that her journey had not been just about Kalen or even the prophecy. It had been about discovering her own power, her own voice, and the capacity to choose her destiny. Her heart ached with residual longing for Kalen, yet it also beat with a fierce recognition of Riven's unwavering support and strength. "I will choose the path that allows me to be whole," she said finally, her voice steady. "And that means embracing the strength I have found, the power I have learned, and the truth of what I need to survive and thrive." Kalen's eyes softened, a mixture of hope and understanding. He realized that Leora's choice was not a rejection of him, but a reclamation of herself. Riven stepped closer, silent but present. Leora felt the heat of his presence, a comforting, stabilizing force. She reached for Kalen's hand first, holding it gently. "I forgive you," she whispered, "and I hope one day we can heal together." Kalen's lips curved into a small, grateful smile, his relief palpable. "I will wait for that day," he said. "If it comes, I will not fail again." Turning to Riven, Leora felt a different warmth, one born not of duty or fate, but of shared trials and trust. "And you," she said softly, "have been my guide, my protector, and my strength when I could not find it myself." Riven inclined his head, eyes unreadable yet kind. "I only hope I have helped you see your own power. You do not need me, yet I will always stand with you." The cathedral was silent except for their breathing, the soft hum of lingering magic filling the space. The shadows of the curse had vanished, leaving only light and clarity. Leora felt a sense of completion, a balance restored, not perfect but real. She had faced rejection, fear, and darkness and emerged stronger. Kalen rose slowly, still weak but determined. "You have changed, both of us," he said, looking between Leora and Riven. "We are not the same people we were yesterday. Perhaps that is the way of fate, not to define us but to test us." Leora nodded, a small smile touching her lips. "Yes," she said, "fate tests us. But it does not bind us forever. We are free to choose if we have courage enough to claim it." The sun had climbed higher, illuminating the cathedral ruins with a soft golden glow. Light danced on the stones, and for the first time, Leora felt a deep, unwavering peace. She had faced despair, humiliation, and the unknown, and had emerged not as a victim of fate, but as a woman who could shape her own destiny. And though the future remained uncertain, she knew one truth: she was no longer defined by rejection or fear. She was defined by strength, courage, and the choices she made for herself. Riven stood beside her, silent, a reminder that even amidst trials and shadows, there could be loyalty, protection, and quiet understanding. Kaelin, still trembling but renewed, was a symbol of forgiveness, of love that could survive even the deepest pain. As the three of them looked out over the forest, Leora realized something profound. She had survived the worst moment of her life, the public rejection, and had found power, freedom, and clarity in its wake. And while the road ahead might hold further trials, she was ready. The forest whispered around them, alive with possibility. And for the first time, Leora felt the thrill of destiny not as a burden, but as a promise.